My name is Meredith Shepard. I'm the recruitment manager for DeLacy Executive Recruitment in North America, and we are going to talk about how to land the interview. First things first, though, who is DeLacy? What do we do? DeLacy Executive Recruitment offers professional recruitment services for employers and candidates in the food and agricultural sectors. As I said, I'm the recruitment manager for North America, but we are global. We also have a team located in the UK, and so we're able to cover recruitment services worldwide. So what does a recruiter actually do? A recruiter, or headhunter sometimes, is someone that provides recruiting services on behalf of their client. So they find talent, also known as people, that meet the specific job requirements. So say, for example, we've got a company that's wanting to find a salesperson. They might come to DeLacy to help them find that exact salesperson, exactly what they're wanting. Now, the recruiters also will help a person find a job if their skill sets align with the job openings that the recruiters are currently working on. So step one of talking about this job search is getting the actual interview. And the best way to do this is to tailor your resume. So I always suggest having a master resume that lists everything. That's something that I have. It's not something that somebody will ever see. It's just I list every bullet of everything that I've done with whatever job I've had in the past. It's honestly way too long. But it's good when I'm applying to something to take that master list and pull maybe the bullets that work for that job specifically, and then remove the ones that aren't pertinent to that job that you're applying to. So the best thing to do is to read over the job description and take notes. Highlight things that you know that you've done, or maybe you have that listed on your resume, but you need to tweak the wording a little bit so it aligns better. And I always say the first few bullets on that job description are the most important. So if you've done that, but maybe it's listed lower on your resume, but it's the top few bullets on the job description, go in and invert that resume. Make sure that those bullets are listed right off the bat, so the person that's reading your application sees those and say, oh, they've done that. They know what they're doing. If you feel like that you're kind of loose on your resume, you need a little bit more to add into it, use other job postings of a similar job that you're doing to kind of supplement that information. It might help give you some ideas of things that you are doing. You just may not think to list those. And so it's just a good way to kind of to jog your memory to make sure you're building out that resume so it's nice and full. You want to mimic the language and use keywords. So for example, and we'll dive into this a little bit later as well, but if you are a commodity trader, but you trade specifically in a certain corn, let's say, make sure that corn is listed in there if that's the job that you're applying to is a trader specifically for corn. So you want to make sure that you're lining up all of the similarities that you can about yourself. I'm also a really big fan of numbers and metrics when it makes sense. So the first bullet I've got there says fundraised for a local nonprofit. Fantastic. That's great. That's wonderful that you know how to do fundraising. But if you could say that you fundraised $1 million for a local nonprofit, that is more impactful. Think of sales metrics. If you supervise a certain number of people, listing those out. So just the more that you can add numbers, metrics, just different measurements, the better off you'll be. Also, make sure you save your resume as a PDF and you want to title it correctly. You don't want to be applying for a DeLacy job and you've got your title as Meredith Shepard agcareers.com job, so it doesn't look like you're paying attention to your details. You want to make sure that you're titling your job appropriately. Do not list it just as resume. A lot of people do that, and then it gets lost in the crowd. Whose resume is this? I've got to go open all of them to figure it out again. So just make sure you take the time to title your resume with your name. If you need to be more detailed as a marketing resume, do that. But so that way it stands out and the interviewer knows whose resume they're looking at. Now your online profile, whether that's on LinkedIn, different online job boards, you want to make sure that it also mimics your resume. Do not just list your job titles and that's it. You want to add context. Use those numbers and metrics and make sure that you've got a variation of words in there. So that way you're being pulled into any recruiters or talent acquisition person's search. So why did I just say that? It has to do with applicant tracking systems and how recruiters are doing their searching. The keywords are what we're looking for. So when I said earlier that somebody hired me to find a salesperson, they're telling me specific things that they want that person to have, specific characteristics or skill sets or experience in a certain industry. And the more that you list those out, the higher the chances you're going to pull into my search and I see you and say, oh, that person has what I'm looking for. I'm going to see if they're interested in applying to this position. So something that's a little deeper into this, but I think it's worth knowing, is Boolean searching. This is a little bit of an old school style searching, but it's what people still use. And the most basic of it is an and or statement. So going back to that grain merchandiser example I used a little while ago, whenever we're searching for somebody, titles can be different. Just because you're a merchandiser, you also might identify as a grain trader. Or you might have on your profile that you are trading grain. So I'm going to put in my search, I'm looking for somebody that has a profile or on their resume. This also applies in those applicant tracking systems. I'm looking for somebody that has a merchandiser or trader or trading or merchandising in their profile, and wheat or bean or grain or corn, and vessel or cargo or container. Now that example is maybe for what my client said they need this person to have experience in. They want them to be a merchandiser or a trader. They want them to be a grain trader, but maybe they have specific experience in wheat or bean or corn. That's okay. And they need this person to know container, vessel, or cargo. That's very specific, but those are the parameters they gave me to go find. So now I'm going to go look for this and hope that I have people pull into my search that meet those criteria, that have those particular words or some variation of that subset in their profile. Now we can also go deeper into different search filters, specifically talking about LinkedIn right now. And there's a multitude of search filters that they have. But a few examples here that I might be using is a radius of a certain zip code. I live in Oklahoma. Maybe I'm working on a job in Oklahoma City, so I'm going to use a 200-mile search radius of an Oklahoma City zip code because they want to have somebody somewhat close. Now I can also just do the state of Oklahoma, or we can do a full search across the US, North America, whatever the client might say they're willing to bring somebody in for. Maybe they need this person to be bilingual in something specific. So if you're listing on your profile that you speak English and Spanish, and I put that on there, that's going to pull you in. Maybe I need somebody that has a certain degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a PhD, or maybe I need them to have studied something specific. So we can put those type of things in there. The more information you're putting on your resume or your LinkedIn profile or any online profile, it's going to be able to pull in those different things. Job titles, so say we want, again, a grain merchandiser. Or maybe I want somebody from a specific company. You can search current company. You can look at their past companies if you need to. There's a lot of different variations in those search filters, and that's why having a good variety of words on your profile is what's going to allow you to come into my search. Help me help you by adding more into your profile. So what I just said, adding a variation of keywords to your resume or your profile, it's going to increase your chances of standing out against other candidates and move you forward to the interview stage. Okay, I've got my interview scheduled. Yay. Now I need to get prepared. So in the interview, there's typically 4 questions that the employer is asking themselves. Why have you applied? How confident are you? Do you fit the team culture? And can we afford you? It is critical that you know the role that you're interviewing for and you know the company. If this is a family-owned company, you need to know that and you need to be able to speak to that. If it's a corporation, whatever that might be, just understand a little bit of the makeup of it, because they're going to pride themselves on how that company exists and they want you to know what you're stepping into. I'm a big fan of having your resume and the job description printed out. So if you're in person, you can look down and reference it so you're not scrambling to see what they referenced on your resume and you're not sure. If you're doing a virtual interview, I might say in the interview, I've got my things printed out. Sorry if I'm looking down, and I can look down and reference what I need to ask. And always, always, always have questions already prepared before you go into the interview. You will probably have some questions that come up during the interview, but don't bank on that. If they answered everything and you have no questions, you don't want to leave the interview without asking anything, because to you, you got your questions answered, but to them, they feel like you may not care, or you don't want to know more about it, even though you found out what you needed to know. You can also prepare for an interview with some of those generic questions that are asked, but sometimes I think those are more hard to answer than specific ones about the job or your skill sets. So they might ask you, tell us about yourself. So this part can be rehearsed, needs to last around 4 minutes, and you want to make sure that all your information is relevant to that job, and you're drawing out those key points that you want them to know. Going back to the grain merchandising or trading, I've been doing it for X number of years. I specifically trade in this, this, or this. Again, highlighting what you're applying for and how you fit. What do you know about our business? Again, talking about the structure. Are they a family-owned, 5th generation business? Make sure you understand the structure of the company and their competitors and their customers. Why should we hire you? You want to focus on your strengths that they said they wanted in the job description. Who you are as a person is just as important as your education, your experience. You don't want to be arrogant, but you want to be confident in what you have to offer. This is the time to brag on you. And what do you feel are your weaknesses? So I think it's great you acknowledge that you have weaknesses, but you want to convey how you turn those into a positive. But a big thing for me is, okay, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? How do I come up with those? I think a great thing to do is to think about a high point and a low point in your career. If there was a high point, what happened? How did that come about? Most likely it was because of a strength of you. You closed your sales goals 200% above. Well, it's because you're good sales, or you're good at relating to people. That could be a strength of yours. And so you're naturally good at getting the sale. Same thing with a weakness. What was a low point? Something happened. And that could be, you're disorganized, or you maybe take on too much at one time. Coming up with those and really reflecting on that is what's going to allow you to answer those questions to the best of your ability. Why have you applied for this job? Don't just say you need a job. You want to be enthusiastic about the company's reputation, your interest, and again, the skills that you have to offer. Those are aligning with the job itself. Why did you leave your previous job? Make sure that you are not critical at all of your previous employer. It is noticeable so quickly if you are negative about them. If you were fired, but there was a reduction in force, make sure you state that there was a reduction in force. Or if you say you were let go, if it was because a lot of people were let go, again, state that, so it doesn't sound like you were just fired because you did something wrong, right? You want to make sure you navigate that correctly and people can understand a reduction in force. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Be honest about that, but think about what impact your answers will have on your success. So if we're hiring for a job in Oklahoma City and you say, I want to be in Hawaii in the next 5 years, is that the best answer for them to hear? Because they're wanting to look at you as a long-term commitment, right? So just think through, but be honest in your answer. What are your salary expectations? You want to let the employer bring up the salary or the benefits aspect. It's okay for you to state whatever your salary expectation is, and perhaps you've discussed that with your recruiter and they would have already put that in. You want to make sure, though, that you don't go rogue and just hike up that number after you and your recruiter have already discussed it and you know what you're looking at. Other kind of common questions are, tell us how you've dealt with a difficult scenario at work. Again, that can be pulling in on your weaknesses or your strengths, depending on what that scenario is. And they're potentially looking to see how you handle maybe managing a team or how you handle conflict with a customer. They want to hear what those responses are going to be. And what achievements are you most proud of? What do they reveal about you? I think that also can lean in with those strengths and weaknesses. So in the interview itself, dress smartly. You never get a second chance to make a good first impression, and your accessories need to be kept to a minimum. Make sure you have professional attire unless otherwise told by the employer. I've had some clients before where the candidate is going out into the fields and maybe they need to wear jeans and boots, or they have to wear steel-toed boots or specific protective gear. that will be provided, or they'll tell you what you need to bring. I have had candidates show up with shirts untucked, too relaxed, even a dirty hat before that they took off in the interview, but that's all that the customer could focus on, all my client could look at, and they couldn't get past it. They were insulted that the person didn't take the time to dress up for the interview. So think through that. It absolutely makes a difference. You want to give a firm handshake, smile, stand up straight, look the interviewers in the eye, wait to be invited to sit, show enthusiasm and energy. You want to think about speaking more slowly at first until you feel comfortable with them. Keeping good eye contact throughout and smiling. And also when you're doing a virtual interview, I'm looking at the camera right now. Here I'm looking down. Maybe I'm looking down at my desk. If you're doing a virtual, make sure you communicate. I might be looking down to reference my notes. Please forgive me, right? You want to let them know that. You want to be honest with your answers. If you don't know the question, just say so or ask them to rephrase the question. Make sure you always answer questions with examples, but try not to talk too long. Make sure you stay on point. Don't go off topic. I've had candidates not move forward again because they were too short with their answers, and the client has said it was like pulling teeth to get an answer out of them. And that wasn't what they're looking for. They're wanting you to offer up that information. Again, you're bragging on yourself so they know what you have to offer to them. Don't criticize those past employers or speak negatively about them in any way. And as I said earlier, have some questions prepared, even about career prospects. What opportunities for growth are there? So these are good questions to have written down in case you don't come up with questions in the middle of the interview. First thing though, make sure that you've got the job description in front of you. You've written out questions about the role itself. Can they explain something a little bit more in depth about what's listed here? For second and third interviews, make sure the previous questions, guide you a little bit deeper. You want to make sure that you are focused and that you know exactly where things are going with it. You know how you want to keep elaborating on it. How does this role fit in with the overall structure of the business? I think that is great if you're not sure. I would maybe table that as the last question if you feel like you've got other ones answered. But if you're not quite sure in what regard or the reporting structure, that's really good to have. What training opportunities do you offer within the company? Again, that could be professional development, internal training, things like that. How will my performance be measured and how often? That's just a good idea to understand the benchmarking and what they're looking for you. What would be the priorities for this role in the first 3 months? So thinking about 30, 60, 90 days and what does that look like for you? What does the onboarding process exactly look like? How long are you going to be onboarded for? And then at the end of the interview, you want to ask, what are the next steps? You've got to show enthusiasm for being offered the job. By asking what are the next steps, that's you putting the ball into their court essentially and saying, I'm interested, I want to move forward. Now, don't freak out if they don't give you a straight answer. A lot of times they play cards close to their chest, or they might say, we're interviewing a few more and we'll get back with you. But by showing that enthusiasm, asking those questions, asking the next steps, you're saying, hey, I'm interested, I want to keep going forward. So some key points to remember. Many candidates are not successful when asked for a second interview because they did not prepare as well as they did for the first. Just because you got through the first, the second and third are going to be just as challenging, sometimes if not more challenging. Maybe they asked some very basic questions the first round, kind of filling out your skill sets. And the second or third, they're going to dive deeper into behavioral questions, understanding what you would deal in difficult scenarios or how you navigate clients. If you do have a telephone interview, do not be lulled into thinking that your interview is just a chat. Make sure it's arranged in advance so you are in a quiet location where you can concentrate and not be interrupted. You want to act and dress as professionally as you would in a face-to-face interview. Do not be in your car hooking over to your Bluetooth. It's distracting and it doesn't show that you've given the time and the professionalism and courtesy to the interviewer who is taking time out of their day to interview you. And also be aware of your privacy settings on your social media platforms. Make sure only your contacts see your profiles and postings. That is still a thing. People are still looking at profiles and making a decision if they want to interview you or not. So just keep all that locked down. So that is going to conclude our presentation. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've left my email here for you. If you have any questions or would like to reach out, please do, or find me on LinkedIn and add me, and I would love to chat. Thank you so much and have a good rest of your day.